All right, quiet on the set. All right, welcome to lesson 8.6. This is called Using Logical Reasoning. It is a problem-solving lesson, and it's a very interesting problem solving. I'm not exactly positively sure exactly why it's in this particular lesson or this particular chapter, but you got to throw it in somewhere. And it's kind of neat, and so you're going to see some very different kinds of problems, and they might not even look anything like math, and that's okay, because what we're after today is not so much math. We're after logic. So we're going to talk about some logic today. So the first kind of question, and I guarantee you're going to see one of these on your quiz, and you're going to see one of these on your test, and we'll practice a few of these on your classwork in class tomorrow, but they're called word squares. And word squares are kind of interesting because they actually have symmetry. So whatever word goes in the first column will also go in the first row. So we're going to look for four words that are all four letters, and we're going to fill them in. So let's look at the puzzle, and let's look at our clues. These are our clues, A through D here. Okay, so continues without end in opposite directions. Okay, we should know that from 8.1, so that is something that actually uses something from this lesson. Thought, a thought. Think of a four-letter word that means a thought. C, a report of recent events, probably on the television or maybe on the radio. And finally, not difficult. All right, I'm going to take a guess that not difficult is probably easy, that reports of recent event is probably news. Thought might be idea, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. And then continues without end in opposite directions. That's kind of the definition of a line. Okay, now, if we're right, what we're going to do is we're going to fill in, let's say line is correct, and I think I'm looking at the first letters here, and I think it's going to work. So I put line in for both, since it's clue A, I put it in for row A, and I put it in for column A. Now, that gives me the first letter of all my others, and if you look down, L-I-N-E, you'll notice that the first letters do work. So I think this is going to work. So the next one would be idea. So again, the second column is idea, and the second row is idea. Next will be news, and finally easy. And sure enough, it fits perfectly, and each row and each column for A, B, C, and D are those words. So that's a word square. Again, except for the mathematical term line, what it has to do with math, well, it's using logical reasoning. And in math, we really want you to be good logical problem solvers. So that's what problem solving is really at. Now, a lot of problem solving uses mathematical skills, but it also uses logic. So these are going to be problems that are going to be more heavy on the logic, less on the math. Okay? Now, another kind of logic problem you've probably seen before, and these are actually becoming really popular on standardized tests. They pop up on IQ tests, they pop up on, not so much on SATs or ACTs that you take to get into college, but in college, if you want to go on to graduate school, you take something called the GRE. Again, it's kind of just like an ERB. It's kind of just like the ERBs that you take at the end of the school year. All right, and so there's a whole section on the GREs that are logic problems like this. So let's take a quick look at how we can set this up and solve it. Usually the names that they'll give you a lot of times will start with the same with different letters. So instead of having to write out all of the people's names, you can just write down A, B, and C. And in this case, each one of them collects something different. So one collects baseball cards or sports cards. Since we're already talking about stamps and coins, there's going to be the S and the C. Okay? And so sports cards are like baseball cards. So let's just call those BBs. All right? And let's make a little chart here. And so we're going to try to figure out from the clues who collects what. And a chart is a super good way, I can't believe I said that, is a really good way to analyze a logic problem. So let's look through some hidden clues here. And what we're going to do is if something is not possible, we're going to put an X. And when we figure it out, we're going to put an O or a circle. All right, so let's start with the clues. So first of all, we have three different people. These are the names. And we have three different hobbies of what they collect. All right, so we've got that. That takes care of the first sentence. The next sentence is Bob's cousin collects stamps. All right, now Bob can't be his own cousin, so that's kind of a subtle way to say that Bob is not the stamp collector because each of these things at the top, we're not going to have three people collecting coins. One person collects each of the three things, so there's going to be a unique solution. So if Bob's cousin collects stamps, Bob is not the person that collects stamps. He either collects the sports cards, the baseball cards, or the coins. All right, so that pretty much takes care of that clue. There's not much else we're going to get out of that. Now, Carlos had lunch with the coin and the stamp collectors. Again, this is kind of one of those sneaky clues, which is basically saying, look, if Carlos had lunch with the person that collects coins and with the person that collects stamps, that's not him. He can't have lunch. Well, he could have lunch with himself, but they don't try to be sneaky like that. So what it's saying is that Carlos, right here, Carlos, is not the coin collector because he had lunch with the coin collector, and he's not the stamp collector. And so the only choice for what Carlos collects is the sports cards, or the baseball cards. Now, if Carlos collects the baseball cards, nobody else can, so we can cross out the rest of the baseball card column because we already know who collects those. All right, now, who collects the stamps? Well, I've eliminated both Bob and Carlos, so the only one left is Anna. So Anna has to be the one that collects the stamps, and so we can cross out, we already crossed out that column, we can cross out the rest of the row because we know what Anna collects. Finally, what does Bob collect? Well, we've already figured out who collects the baseball cards and the stamps, and the only space available is the coins, and so Bob is the coin collector. Now, most people could read this off the chart, but it's an awful lot better you don't have to necessarily write out all their names, but say basically write out what the solution is. So Anna is the stamps. Okay. Bob is the coins. And Carlos, and go back to the original terminology. We use baseball as the abbreviation, but it's actually sports cards. Okay? And so that's how you figure out logic problems. Now there's, you know how you can buy books of crossword puzzles or word searches, or one of the really popular puzzles nowadays are Sudokus. And actually Sudokus are a lot like this kind of logic. Well, they actually make books, Dell especially is one of the it's one of the puzzle manufacturers. And they actually make whole books of logic puzzles where you have to figure out stuff like this. And some of them are a little different, some of them are a little easier, a lot of them are a lot harder, where you have to figure out, what color house 5 different people live in, and what their last name is, and what their occupation is. And those have a lot more clues, and they take a lot longer to solve. But this is the idea of logic problems, okay? So again, using logical reasoning. Here's an example of using logical reasoning in the first one, where we were doing the word diagram, the 4x4 word squares, are both examples of how you can use logic in a thinking but not necessarily super mathematical way. And that's what we're going to be talking about in class. So thank you for watching the video. Remember some key details about these two problems, okay? And you should be all set for your daily quiz tomorrow. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.